There are cities that seem ordinary during the day. People go to work, children go to school. But when night falls, everything changes. In this city, power doesn't come from politicians or from laws. It comes from one thing: money. And in the shadows, behind fancy restaurants and quiet offices, there is a single organization that controls it all: the Mafia. People don't talk about them often, but everyone knows they exist. Men in black suits, luxury cars, and cold, emotionless stares. When someone enters a store, everyone becomes silent, not out of respect, but out of fear. And at the top of this organization, there is only one man. The man who gives the orders, the man who decides who lives and who disappears. His name is known in every corner of the city, but nobody says it out loud. Because in the world of the Mafia, words can be deadlier than bullets. That night, the city looked just like any other night. Cars passing quietly through the streets, lights glowing from apartment windows, people living their ordinary lives. But inside one house, something important was happening. The boss of the Mafia had just become a father. A small baby had been born into the family. To the outside world, he was just another child. But to the people inside that house, he was the future. As the years passed, the boy began to grow up. But his childhood was not like other children. While other kids played in parks, he watched men in expensive suits come and go from his home. While other kids worried about school, he noticed something strange. Every conversation in the house suddenly stopped whenever he entered the room. There were secrets everywhere, and even though nobody told him directly, he could feel it. His family was different when he was old enough to understand the world a little better. He began to notice things that most people would never see. Late-night meetings, whispered conversations behind closed doors, suitcases being carried in, and sometimes never coming out again. And every time he asked questions, his father would simply smile and say one thing: "Someday, you will understand." But the truth was, that day was coming sooner than he expected. One evening, something unusual happened. The boy was walking through the hallway of the house when he noticed the door to his father's office was slightly open. Normally, that door was always closed. Curious, he quietly moved closer. Inside the room, several men were sitting around a table, all of them wearing black suits. Their voices were low, serious. On the table, there were stacks of money and several briefcases. The boy had seen money before, but never like this. At that moment, he realized something important. These were not normal business meetings. From that day on, he started paying more attention. He noticed men arriving late at night. Sometimes they carried briefcases inside the house, and sometimes they left with them. But one night, he saw something he would never forget. One of the men opened a suitcase. Inside, there were stacks and stacks of cash, more money than he had ever seen in his life. The men didn't look surprised. To them, it was normal. But for the boy, it was the first time he truly understood the power his family had. A few days later, his father called him into the office, the same room where those secret meetings happened. His father looked at him carefully. For a moment, the room was completely silent. Then he spoke. "You are growing up now." The boy listened quietly. His father continued, "If you are going to be part of this family, you must understand 3 rules. He raised 3 fingers. First, family comes before everything. Second, trust no one outside the family. And finally, third, betrayal is something we never forgive." At that moment, the boy realized something. His life was about to change forever. A few months passed after that conversation. The boy tried to live his life normally, going to school, spending time outside, pretending everything was normal. But deep inside, he knew something had changed. One evening, his father called him again. This time, his tone was different, serious, calm. His father looked directly at him and said, "You are old enough now." The boy didn't say anything. He already knew what that meant. His father slowly placed a small briefcase on the table. "It's time for your first job." The next night, the boy found himself walking alone through the narrow streets of the city. The briefcase was in his hand. It felt heavier than it looked. Every step he took made his heart beat faster. The streetlights reflected on the pavement. Cars passed slowly beside him. To anyone watching, he was just another teenager walking home. But inside that briefcase was something that connected him to the world his father controlled. And tonight, he was about to enter that world for the first time. He finally reached the place his father had told him about. A quiet alley behind an old restaurant. A man was already waiting there. Black suit, calm face. The man didn't say much. He simply looked at the briefcase, then at the boy. The boy slowly handed it over. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the man nodded and walked away. Just like that, it was over. A simple exchange. But the boy understood something important. There was no turning back now. When he returned home, curiosity took over. He couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. Later that night, he quietly opened a similar briefcase he had seen earlier. Inside, there were stacks of cash. More money than most people could earn in years. At that moment, something changed inside him. The fear he had felt earlier slowly began to fade, and in its place, a new feeling appeared. Power. After that night, things started to change. The boy was no longer just watching from the sidelines. Now, he was part of it. A few days later, one of his father's men took him to a small shop in the city. The man explained calmly, "Every business here pays for protection." The boy watched as the shop owner slowly handed over an envelope full of cash. The man beside him simply nodded and took it. No threats, no violence, but the message was clear. Everyone in this city knew the rules. That night, the boy walked through the streets alone. The city looked different now. Before, he had seen normal shops and restaurants, but now he understood what was really happening behind the scenes. Every business, every street, every deal was connected. All the money eventually flowed back to one place, his father's organization. And for the first time, he realized how powerful that network truly was. Back in his room, the boy sat quietly at the table. Stacks of money were placed in front of him. He slowly counted every bill. The sound of the paper, none of the smell of the cash. It was strangely satisfying. Not long ago, he had been nervous just carrying a briefcase. But now, the fear was almost gone. Instead, he felt something new growing inside him. Confidence, maybe even ambition. And deep down, he started to wonder how far this life could take him. As months passed, the boy was no longer treated like a kid. People in the organization started to recognize him. They knew exactly who he was, the boss's son. But something else began to happen. He wasn't just following orders anymore. He started making small decisions on his own. Where to collect money, which streets to visit, which people to trust. Slowly, his reputation inside the organization began to grow. One evening, a problem appeared. A small business owner refused to pay, something that almost never happened. One of the men came to report it. They expected the boy to simply pass the problem to his father, but instead, he decided to handle it himself. He walked into the shop calmly, looked the owner directly in the eyes, and reminded him of the rules. The next day, the payment arrived. Word spread quickly through the organization. The boss's son had solved the problem on his own. Some people were surprised, others were impressed. For the first time, the men around him didn't just see him as the boss's child. They started seeing him as someone who could lead, someone who could make decisions, someone who belonged in this world. That night, his father invited him to another meeting. But this time, things were different. He wasn't standing in the corner anymore. He was sitting at the table. Around him were the most powerful men in the organization. Discussions about money, territory, and new opportunities. The boy stayed quiet and listened carefully because he understood something important. The small jobs were only the beginning. The real game was much bigger. As the organization continued to grow, it started attracting attention, not from rival gangs, but from something far more dangerous: the police. Detectives began investigating unusual money movements in the city, businesses being forced to pay for protection, large amounts of cash appearing in unexpected places. At first, it seemed like nothing serious, but slowly, the investigation started getting closer. One night, one of the men rushed into the meeting room. His face looked tense. He had news. The police had arrested someone connected to the organization, not an important member, but someone who knew too much. The room became silent. Everyone understood the danger. If that man talked, everything could fall apart. After the meeting ended, the boy couldn't stop thinking. Something felt wrong. The arrest had happened too quickly, almost as if someone had helped the police, someone inside the organization. For the first time, a new fear appeared. Not the police, but betrayal, because in this world, enemies outside the family were dangerous, but enemies inside were deadly. The next few days were tense. Everyone in the organization started watching each other more carefully. No one trusted anyone completely anymore. The boy began asking quiet questions, listening more than speaking. Piece by piece, the truth slowly appeared. One of the men inside the organization had been secretly working with the police, selling information, helping them get closer to the family. It was the kind of betrayal that could destroy everything. When the boy finally confirmed the truth, he knew exactly what had to happen. That night, a small meeting was held. Only the most trusted members were there. The boy explained everything he had discovered. The room stayed silent for a moment. No one liked what they were hearing, but everyone knew the rules. In this world, betrayal had only one consequence. The boy looked at the men around the table. Then he gave the order. The traitor had to disappear. And just like that, the boy had made the most dangerous decision of his life. The disappearance of the traitor did not go unnoticed. Within days, rumors started spreading through the city. Other criminal groups began paying attention. They saw weakness. They thought the organization was vulnerable. And one rival group decided to make a move. One night, one of the family's businesses was attacked, windows broken, cars destroyed. A clear message had been sent. This was no longer just about money. This was about control of the city. When the boy heard the news, he remained calm. But inside, he understood something. The game had changed. This was no longer business. This was war. The city felt different that night. Everyone could feel the tension in the air. The rival group had made their move, and now the family had to respond. Inside the office, the boy sat quietly with the men of the organization. Maps were spread across the table. Plans were being made. For the first time, he was the one giving the orders. No longer just the boss's son. Now he was the leader. Late that night, the plan was set into motion. Cars moved silently through the dark streets. Every man knew exactly where he needed to go. The rival group had no idea what was coming. Within minutes, the balance of power in the city changed. The message was clear. The family was still in control, and anyone who challenged them would regret it. The room was quiet. Stacks of money surrounded the walls. The same money he once looked at with curiosity was now everywhere around him. He sat alone in the boss's chair, the most powerful seat in the entire organization. Years ago, he was just a boy asking questions. Now, he controlled the streets. He controlled the businesses. He controlled the money. But as he looked around the room, something strange crossed his mind. All this power, all this money, and yet, for the first time in his life, he realized the truth. Once you enter this world, there is no way out.